Go ahead, Mike.
Mike Chadwick, internal audit. Ann Thurn, deputy city manager.
Felix Rivera.
Suzanne LaFrance.
Pete Peterson. Dick Trainee.
Zig Bergen, Zico Consulting.
Okay, Zeg, we'll turn time over to you, sir.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. This is the July update. Congratulations, we got something resolved Tuesday night with regard to the hopefully final adjustment to the funding. So let's start off with the next page. I think the very beginning first message I'd like to make sure we get across here is that in order for the team to get you a 10-2 go live, you're probably going to have to accept the fact that you're going to have something less than 100%. Okay? You're probably going to be in the 80 to 90% range, possibly 95 in terms of functionality, capabilities, reporting, all of that stuff. You're not going to have everything, and I think you need to recognize that, and that some of it is going to go spinning off. Okay? And we've talked about this before and actually listed what some of those things are. So let's go to the next one and talk about the good news. The good news is that you're funded for the remaining 3 months. And that's great. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off of the team. The team is moving forward. I think that's good. I think the project is definitely, as we saw in that prior slide, we're on the downhill side now. We're heading down. Okay? And not down in the sense of negative, but down in the sense that we're going downhill on the ski slope. Okay? SAP is reacting and has been bringing in the best of the best to help some of the issues. That's good news. Very specifically, SRM, there's a specialist here and that purchasing department seems to be very happy with the fact that they're here and that they know what they're talking about. And they are firefighters. Most of the team now, I think, is starting to see the end. I mean, it's 3 months off. They're really starting to see the end. So there's some there's some renewed energy, I think, because of that.
The goal's in sight.
I'm sorry?
The goal's in sight, so they're getting
goal is in sight.
second wind.
Yep.
Right at the end of the tunnel.
I think we all need to be aware of the August 11 go, no go. That is the target date that the Executive Steering Committee has set, that it will be asking Alden, okay, does payroll work? And, are we able to acquire or purchase services and goods from beginning to end? Two very key functional areas. If those work, then presumably the Alden is going to say, yes, we can go, we should go, let's keep moving. Okay? Next. So there are some caveats. And I've already mentioned this, and that is the fact that we need to recognize that we are reducing the thoroughness of the implementation process slightly. We'll talk a little bit more about what that is. In order to have functionality at 9/11, 9/11 being got to be able to report time for pay. Okay? And 10/2, got to be able to start receiving transactions on a day-to-day basis in terms of invoices and issue purchase orders and so forth. MOA must accept the probability that not all the data will be perfectly there. One of the reasons why things have gotten so convoluted in the last few months is that there's been a drive by MOA personnel to get perfection with regard to the data. And that's killing them. Constantly spinning, redoing, renewing. And if, the example I think is, it was a purchase orders. I think there were like 1,003 purchase orders that were brought in, 2017 purchase orders. And out of the 1,003, 1,000 of them were just fine, and 3 were not. Okay? So 3 didn't have matching or appropriate account numbers or organization codes in order to process correctly. That's something that should be simply said, we're going to enter those manually, let's be done with it, let's move on. And that's an example, and hopefully we can get the entire team, all at MOA, to recognize that that's what we need to be doing at this stage of the game. So not everything will be perfectly migrated in an automated fashion. Probably have to do some manual data entry. Okay, not all the reporting will be available. We've talked about this. But we need to recognize that, and people need to understand that. last thing in the world we need right now is on October the 3rd, somebody saying that report isn't there. We need to know it's not going to be there. We need to realize that. And we need to recognize that, there's a strong probability that SAP will not be providing the 20-day post-go live support that they had originally contracted. It's not part of the capital program. So there's a lot of thinking going on there, a lot of discussions, but there's that possibility that they won't be around. Okay, let's go on to the next page. This is the high-level summary bar chart, if you will, for the project that was put out by the team, and it was in June. And it was this is the outlook. A couple of things I want to make sure you're aware of. I mean, this is sort of hidden, but the team is going through mock data loads, mock data conversions, and there's literally going to be 4 of those. They're right now working on Mach 3, the 3rd iteration. This particular iteration is the first time the team is loading 2017 data as opposed to 2016. Okay? But it's hidden, and I want you to be aware it's there. There's this box out here, and I wanted to kind of remind everybody that really the data that's coming over from your current system actually won't be brought in until after September closes. So from a timing perspective, we need to realize that data will not be there in terms of the prior month's data will not be there at 10/2. You'll be accepting active transactions, but you really won't be accumulating them and putting them in account numbers and account balances because you won't have those until after you close PeopleSoft. Make sense? So just as a highlight. So, and you can see, they're talking about, well, when are we going to do time entry? When are we going to start that? When are we going to be doing the training? But you'll also notice that we've got some things in here that we're in the plan called performance testing. We've got user acceptance testing. So let's go to the next page. And we start seeing some changes now to this overall plan, and we need to realize that they have taken place. Remember I said earlier, we need to accept the fact that we're not going to be as complete with regard to the implementation activities. That's because in order for us to make the date, the team has agreed that we're going to cut back on user acceptance testing. Okay? Yes?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Zen.
So, I know you said this before, and some of these questions are coming up after Tuesday from constituents, especially who want more details. And I've heard a lot of concern about this testing not being part of the plan. I mean, what's the impact? What can we expect from these sorts of standard tests, right, with this kind of project going away?
Well, user acceptance testing is not as structured as the integration testing. It's it's much more free form. And basically what has happened is that the team has extended the systems integration testing, and it's driving from here out to here.
And never...
In essence, it's replacing user acceptance testing
Okay.
by pulling in the
Okay.
concepts of user acceptance testing
Right.
into systems integration testing cycle 3.
And presumably, we would be able to, or people would be able to continue to use the system. I mean, the expectation is it's going to be working so well that eliminating all this, we can work out the bugs as we go.
Alden, the bug worker outer.
So user acceptance testing is an opportunity after the integration testing has been done to expose more people to the system. We took that out because, you know what, we don't have any other people. Our people that we are one threaded throughout the entire organization and utilities. So this plan is kind of put up on a macro level for what a normal organization might have and so forth. And what we found was we are a single subject matter expert across. They've been working on this thing for 6 years. There's nobody else to bring in. You go to MLP or AWU, they got one person doing all their work. That one person is working. User acceptance testing is an opportunity to bring 12 other people that happen to be working in those departments to be exposed to the system for the first time. And what we realize is we don't actually have those people. That's why we've been struggling, is if we had 12 people, we'd be much further along in our process. So it was determined that it wasn't something that was overly critical because we actually don't have them. The people that are actually using the system, they're the ones that are getting the system ready right now and are able to do that. That was probably the easiest one for us to be able to do. In addition, that's an opportunity to think outside the box and come up with just anything you possibly have to try to hammer the system with. Reality is with the system's going to do the core functionality, and trying to break it with something that may never happen or happen once a year, it's not really worth our
Right.
time and energy to be able to do that. We'll fix that through. So user acceptance testing, I would not argue is something that was really a detriment. It was something that was just put out there. Remember, SAP just kind of put this out as a template to begin with. None of these steps, we didn't have to have 3 sits. We could have had 2, 1, 5. It just, that was a starting point. The one that's probably, I'm sure maybe Zig was going to get to, is performance testing. That is one that's a little concerning to us. A couple of reasons with that. But performance testing is not testing how well the system performs. It's testing about, are all the interfaces attached to the production environment? So have they been repointed? Because we have 4 different environments. Are they all there? Do we have a transaction that just hits the system a lot and we process a lot of things that the system's speed goes down? It's testing the speed of the system. But our entire system is in the HEC environment, which is off-site in Santa Clara, California, with a whole bunch of things, and we have a direct pipe to it right now. In fact, we're even talking about doubling the speed of that pipe in an effort to try to ensure we don't have a business transaction that runs and just lowers the speed down. In a perfect world, we would have loved to have an opportunity to hit a couple of these things. It would have been good practice to do that. But it's not testing how well the system performs. It's testing the production environment, just hitting it with a lot of transactions and so forth. We're attempting to do a couple things to smoke test it, they call it, to make sure we don't have any surprises. We would love to have a week or 2 or 4 weeks in this particular example, but it's not capable with the amount of problems and issues we've been having with data. We need as much cutover opportunity as we have of time, and we had to look at that's been, we've talked about the long tent pole. We had to pull something out in order to be able to hit that
Sure.
date.
Sure. It's just a little concerning, given that there won't be SAP support or SAP support after
I
live.
was going to raise
Getting
my
back
hand.
to that, when does SAP full tent
I
leave?
said there may not be, but
Yeah, that was a little concerning. I thought I'd wait, but I'll bring it up right now at
Okay.
this particular point.
That's a good point.
I don't want to get into too much detail here, but because of GASB 51, which is an accounting rule, when we put the contract when we negotiated the original contract, 20 days of SAP post-go live support was there. After the contract was done, we found out that we couldn't actually use capital for post-go live support. So we're using that capital for what we need to have right now, which is why I asked for a specific amount. So we pulled it out of the contract. We certainly have the intent, which we're going to be working on, and I was actually going to bring this up. We're going to be working on a change order here with SAP as soon as I get the current one signed, hopefully tomorrow, that will actually add post-go live support back. However, the administration, when they composed the budget last year, had put post-go live support in operating, so it's in the ITD area. I just couldn't pay for it out of capital because of the rule. So we're going to do a change order with them that's going to actually bring it the 20 days, maybe more, back in based upon the funding that's currently in the ITD budget. No new funding, I know I heard, but it's already in operating.
But this is post-live funding.
So we are going to do it. It will be there. We're working on it right now. I will say, however, it will require us to come back to the Assembly probably in August to ask us to have spending authority. We won't need extra funding, but we'll need the spending authority, because when I did the one on Tuesday, it was only specifically capital related on what we have that we could spend with SAP. So you will see an SAP probably in August, maybe the second one, but it's just saying, allowing us, please spend the money we have in the operating budget to give SAP to do the post-go live support. We absolutely have post-go live support. We have the funding already. Peloton will have people working on it as well, but some language in counting rule kind of thing, but we will have post-go live support. In fact, because the system is no system is 100%. Let me put that out there. Yeah,
Sure.
Nobody's ever bought a 100% system online. There's always going to be issues, so we certainly planned for it. And we are going to make sure that we've got people here for as long as possible with our current funding, and if there's additional funding, that'll be through discussions. But we have over $1.3 million, I know, in the existing operating budget that was approved last year for this particular thing. So our functional steering committee and all the SNEs and everybody who's worried about having a system ready at the time, we will have people here. In fact, we're even trying to look at seeing if our consultants can be here the entire month and not go back and forth. So we're working on a variety of things to mitigate this. No longer.
Thank you, Alden. It just concerns me. I want to see how many O-rings blow out on this thing as we activate it. Go ahead, Zig.
Okay, a couple other things. Mark 3, as I mentioned to you earlier, because we've had this whole issue of spinning to try to get perfection in the data, has stretched out. I mean, it's supposedly going to get cut off tomorrow. Okay? But it has stretched, obviously, from here to today's date. Okay? Performance testing, we've already talked about. I do think it's important to notice that the training effort was supposed to start, actually training was supposed to start last week in terms of plan, and now apparently the first class is tomorrow. So that's pushed a little bit, which means that all of a sudden, the training time is becoming a little compressed. Okay? Let's talk about, just some commentary about the planning. I call it part 2 because I had some commentary last month. Here's another version. It's dragging out. I mean, the planning on the project team members, they keep dragging this thing out, in terms of the plan. And I'll start showing you a little bit more about that. So the first replan was provided to the team, to Alden, 6 weeks ago. The project management team seems to be dragging their feet, and they seem to be talking about the reasons why they're dragging their feet, which is lack. They were waiting for the change order, waiting for the change order. And then, by the way, MOAs, you've got to change the data again. So those kinds of things were happening. It seemed to me like the project management team was focusing on managing the contract and not managing the project. So the final push is coming.
Zig, I've got a question for you. Suzanne, ma'am.
I apologize, but just so I understand, who exactly is on the project management team you're referring to there?
Most of the people that are managing this project are SAP people.
Okay,
That's their contract. That's what's in the contract. So they're supposed to be managing everything.
Okay, so we're just, thank you.
So that includes the top dogs reporting directly to Alden plus the next layer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Alden, comments?
It's not me, but yes, it is partly my responsibility, and obviously the project manager we have for the municipality of Anchorage to try to manage the plan and manage them through the plan, and I can certainly appreciate your question, but the plan does come from SAP and the leadership that they have.
Yeah, they're the ones that generate all this stuff.
Zig, let me ask Alden one other question. Alden, how many IT people do we have that are going to actually run this program? City of Anchorage, municipal employees. Because ultimately SAP is going to go away. If there's a problem, IT's got to deal with it. How many are trained on SAP?
Mr. Cheney, I actually can't answer that particular question. That'd be more of an IT question. I can tell you that.
And would you get with IT and ask them the question?
That his department is, they certainly have hired some people.
Robert's going to answer the question for me. Robert?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yes, IT would be one of the departments that reports through me, and we've been staffing up to be able to handle this transition and manage the transition once we go into operations mode. I think right now we have 3 people who are that we are envisioning as being dedicated to SAP for the IT piece for support. And certainly within each department is going to have the SMEs will turn into, essentially will transition from an SME from a project sense into expert users who will be able to understand.
Functional experts in each department?
Yes, each department is going to have its own needs and how they use SAP going forward after go live. But within the IT world, to be able to manage the contracts we're going to have with AMS and HEC, to be able to manage the pipelines that we have, we're going to have 3 people dedicated for sure, and then we'll have a host of other people who will have some functionality that's attributed towards maintaining and working on SAP going forward. And then, as Zig had mentioned, his first slide is the 80-90% there. So we're going to have some things we catch up on after we go live, and the focus there will be how we do that inside production environment.
Because this is such a a long process. The somebody's got a pure interest in this. I want to make sure we've got a chart that gives us who the employees are and IT that are working on this. Because those are the ones I'm going to want to talk to if we have a problem with it. So if you get that to us, we'd appreciate it. Because then the last time we tried to initiate this, the IT guys said, I have nothing to do with the process. I don't understand it. I wasn't trained on SAP. Then he tried to run for mayor. So I'd really like to know who we've got, our trained experts on this thing, as we get into it.
Yes, certainly, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
I'm happy to provide that, but also to sort of talk about it in the context of post-go live. We're already addressing that from an operations perspective about how we bring all the people that are touched by SAP within the municipality, how they all work and how they work together. So
Good.
We've been working on that now for several months.
Mr. France?
A follow-up question, thank you, Mr. Chair. So when you had mentioned training, and you're talking about your on-staff folks, does this training also include our IT people? Because I would imagine they would be doing some shadowing with SAP folks and
What the IT folks have referred to as knowledge transfer is going on as we
Okay.
speak. And for the last few weeks, it's been going on, and there's been, the shadowing, if you will, of people working together and people passing on knowledge and information from a technology perspective to MOA IT personnel.
because our expectation clearly is that the on-site IT people are going to be the ones we're going to be going to for problems. I mean, once we get past presumably that period of time with a SAP contracted help. And I think it's critical that they feel empowered or have the skill sets to be able to take this on. I mean, I've heard other people mention they think it's going to cost the city $5 to $10 million a year to maintain this.
Well, it certainly won't be free.
And that's very concerning.
Yeah, I doubt if it would be 10 million, but
Okay.
It's
Probably
certainly-
5 would be more
It's certainly going to
realistic.
be noticeable. Sure. You bet.
Before I go back to Zig, Alden, one last question. Where you said the pipeline, they want to double the pipeline. What type of pipeline are we talking about? A dedicated line going
We have a
to
dedicated line to there was
To California?
to Santa Clara. It's supposed to be like 50 gigs or whatever, and they're going to try and make it 100. It's relatively cheap to do it up to increase that speed compared to the whole cost of it.
because the concern's always been if the data's down there, we've got to be able to have instant access to it.
Yeah, the system is there, and every time you do a transaction, it has to go down, do it, and back and forth to be able to do that. And we are adding ECM to this, which is document storage, and so those are some areas where we've got to see how much volume and what it looks like to be able to do that. But that was an area I thought was a very ingenious way for the IT department to try to just come up with one possible assistance to the solution of not doing the performance testing to just help mitigate what may be something we wouldn't know ahead of time. I thought it was a pretty good idea.
Thank you, Alden. Zig, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you, sir.
Well,
We
just wanted to
have questions.
Summarize, if you will, into the final push. What's got to go on now for the next few months? And fundamentally, we got to be able to say we can pay employees and we can acquire services and materials. I mean, that's what the business of the municipality is all about, and that's the stuff we need to focus on that. End of story, focus. And when we come back later, and I will be suggesting that you need to be involved. You probably need to be asking Alden for, give me information about that. Okay? So, because that way you'll be assured that it's happening and it gets done. And yes, down here, we've already said earlier, got to be able to accept some of the risks that are associated with some of the things that we are shortening and not being quite as complete in terms of the implementation approach and so on. We just need to be aware of that, okay? So let's go on and talk about planning to the finish. I showed this to you a month ago. And this is not something that I created. This is something that came from the SAP project management team. This is their detailed plan. Now, it has 2,332 line items in it. Okay, so the tool allows us to do some compression, if you will, and consolidation so that you can get it all on one page and you can see it. The other, if you go to the next page, the thing I think I wanted you to see is this is what I get what I get is the fact that there are several columns that are hidden. Okay, and then there are, all of those bars, go back a page if you would. These things are hidden. They're there. They're just hidden. And so I need to spend some time going through this document and this file to create, or the next page, to create this. Okay? So this is now, it now has 3,000 line items. So there have been some
3,009.
line items added since last month. Okay? And I've had to do some consolidation and compression so that it's analyzable. Is that a word?
It is now.
But you'll notice right away, and mind you, the project management team has been at this for 2 months, yet I still have question marks here. It's hard for you to see this, but in the hard copy you can see those. Question marks in this particular software mean that there's a line item in there that somebody has assumed the default. Ergo, it's not there. They haven't done it. Okay? So if it's in duration, that means that they used the default duration of 1 day. And odds are that's not what the intent was supposed to be. Okay? And then the other thing we start seeing, this is after I've compressed all this, I'm sitting there going, how is it that when we finish a task, like payroll parallel, all of a sudden the work hours in there go to 0? I don't understand. So we're losing the audit trail. Okay? We're losing the audit trail. So let's go to the next page. So here's some commentary. They have, the first time when I did this,
Do you have questions?
I said,
Suzanne?
why is this still there? Because everybody had already agreed a month ago that we were going to remove user acceptance testing. Yeah, it was there, but now it's finally gone. Okay, so performance testing is gone. Post go live, I removed that just for discussion purposes, okay, because it's not part of the contract. There are several new items. The team continues to hide the bars. I mentioned that. The team continues to overlook a disciplined approach to using predecessors. We've talked about critical path quite a few times, right? That's what critical path is all about. It's the concept in the system of being able to say, I have to finish line item 1 before I can start line item 2. And what happens is that as soon as your line item 1 takes too long, line item 2 gets pushed, as it should be. Well, that's not happening. There are quite a few of these items in here that are not getting pushed, and that is worrisome to me. And from a project management perspective, that means all of a sudden I don't have visibility to something that's running out of time. Okay? The team continues to omit estimating Muni resources. This is the comment I made to you earlier where it seems to me like they're focusing on managing their contract as opposed to managing the project. For instance, there is a line item in there about deliver training. Now, this is not inconsequential. This is a big deal. There are 40 trainers who have been trained on how to train. Because we all agree we're going to do the train-the-trainer approach. Okay, we've got 40 of them. There are, pick a number, 30 instructor-led classes, each of which is, pick a number, 3 hours, 4 hours. Pretty easy to calculate 40 people times 3 hours times the number of classes, and pretty soon I can estimate approximately orders of magnitude how many hours of effort I'm going to need from Muni personnel. And then I track it, right? Then I go next week, I say, did I get those hours? Not doing it. Okay? Not doing it. I've mentioned this one before. It appears to me that the second level of managers are managing the project with off-book plans. That they have their own individual detailed plans and then they're reporting progress to this master plan. As opposed to linking them all so that they're literally part of the master plan. Does that make sense?
Alden, any comments?
The product are there to do that.
You probably see it differently than he does, so.
Well, I'm going to make some comments. One way, I'm the one who asked Zig to heavily look at their project plan several months ago as a part of his assistance of me in this project. And I said, spare no expense, or no, spare no looking into it from a perspective, and criticize them wherever you possibly can, or find the mistakes or whatever. And I think what Zig is going through here is a variety of things that he has. You know, we have a project manager as well who's kind of looking it over and kind of tied on data and a few other things. So I wanted to have, you know, if the resource was available to help look at this level of detail. And he's referring to the SAP team throughout his conversations and his plan. And I think what you see here in some of these things is them, you know, focused on what they're doing and so forth, and not going in and necessarily updating dates, hours, percentages on a daily, weekly basis, and you get some of these gaps as you go through. This is our opportunity to hold them accountable to the plan as well, and Zig does a pretty good job of, he meets or talks to them, and he continually asks how to plan, and you're seeing them. Would they be doing this on their own without this pushing? Probably not, and it would be even worse than what it currently is. But I think for the most cases, they are probably managing things on a crisis situation where we've got all these things we're trying to do, and a specific plan document that said something was supposed to take 6 hours. Somebody's probably not paying much attention if it took 6 hours or 2 hours or 50 hours. Did we get it done and moved on to the next thing? So as a result of that, when Zig has an opportunity to go in and just focus on all the details of those 3,000 lines, you get these anomalies that pop in there. But this is he's kind of the person that keeps SAP honest from a plan perspective. I don't have a problem with him bringing this to the attentions. It certainly helps us. We can't go in, I can tell you, on 3,000 lines every day and make sure that they're moving on something. We're trying to make sure that we've got everything else covered. We have struggled from day one to get them to tell us about MOA hours. It has been a nightmare because we have to be able to plan and provide the appropriate resources, especially as you know, we are very thin in a lot of areas. And we never, that request for the entire 2 years I've been here has fallen on deaf ears to be able to do that. So those are just a smattering of comments with regards to that. But you've seen some things they've changed and some things that continue to pop up.
Mr. France has a question. Before I wanted the record to note that we did have Ms. Dabowski and Mr. Kropp join us about 10 minutes ago for the record, or 15. Mr. France, go ahead.
The statement that we're losing the audit trail, so would that be then, Alden, because the critical path isn't being updated? Is that what we're referring to here?
Go to the next page, if you would, please. I'm talking about this column called work hours.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, any decent project manager, when you're estimating and planning a project, you're going to try to figure out what the resources are that are required in terms of hours. Mm-hmm. And then you need to worry about schedule, which is duration, and you've also got the dates, okay?
Right.
This column, which exists in their electronic system, in their file, is hidden when I get it. Mm-hmm. They don't look at it. And I'm sitting there going, how can you possibly not be looking at it? So I unhide that column so that I can see where are all the hours being spent, and I see zeros. So somebody along the way, when they got to 100% complete, decided that they can just go ahead and delete the hours. And now we don't have a track record of saying, well, how many hours were actually planned for parallel payroll? That's the one that's zero in here. They just finished it. They finished 3 cycles. There must have, pick a number. I mean,
we had a 9-week parallel payroll cycle with 4 people, so it's easy to take 40 hours times 9 weeks and 4 people. That work was done, completed successfully. Those hours were spent, and it is in the past. So what he's saying is, since it's a done deal, they've moved on to something.
They're not going to spend any time on that anymore.
And part of the problem is you're going to do a forensic examination at some point in time in this thing. I think it'll happen. And how do you find it? How do you find the
We do
data?
it different days.
I have the original version from probably.
Don't lose it.
Oh, that's actually got numbers in it.
Don't lose it.
Okay, so let's just talk a little bit more about the anomalies here. And you know, one of the things a lot of folks have kind of asked me is, why do I keep harping on the bars? Okay, well, to me, if I'm managing a project, I want to be able to say, here's where I'm supposed to be, and I can look at this at a summary level and say, wait a minute, where are my problems? And what I found, for instance, this is an interesting one, because I looked at the detail too. I mean, but as soon as I saw some of these things, I looked at these bars and I saw, are you ready for this? Training was ending in March of 2018.
And this is going live when?
Well, but I saw that only because the bar was sitting. I mean, if you're looking at 3,000 tasks, you think I can find that date in here? Of course not. But if I see this bar out here that says it ends in March of 2018, I know there's a problem there, and I go look. And lo and behold, I found 2 tasks where they literally had said, this must complete no earlier than 3/2018. It was a mistake. It was an error. But the bars helped me do that. If I'm managing the project, that's how I find it, and I fixed it. Because I was able to send an email immediately to the person running it and said, hey, isn't this a mistake? Okay, so there's one. HCMBW reports. There's a line item in here. It basically shows you that there's 2 weeks left, okay, yet they've estimated 1,200 hours of work, and they're only 12% complete. So you figure it out, 88% of 1,200 hours, and I've only got 2 weeks to get it done in time. Are they going to make it? No way. Unless you have 1,000 people working on it. I'm exaggerating. Mach 3, I mean, we talked about Mach 3, and yes, it's stretched out, but what I can't figure out is I got a master plan here that says Mach 3 is complete. It says 100% complete in that plan. But they're still working on it as of today. And this is as of last week. So what happened? Whoever's running it decided to say it was 100% complete because they thought it was going to be 100% complete. Cutover
I'll have to call
planning.
you back. I'm in a meeting.
Cutover planning says it's supposed to require 69 days. Requires 2,400 hours of SAP personnel, and it says it's 0% complete. Yet they've been working on it. I don't get it. Okay. Let's go to page 16, please. Okay.
We're gonna run out of time.
Yeah, when project managers plan a 5-year project, it's understandable that they're going to be very approximate and very broad, right? If they're planning 3 months, you're much closer to your target date. You ought to be much more precise. Yet we seem to be in a trap of keeping things imprecise. I don't get it. I don't get it. So, the plan seems to become more circumspect as we get closer to the go, no-go, which is the direct opposite of what it should be. I mean, the team does know, and they should know, how many training classes are we going to get? How many reports do we have to develop? How many reports do we have to validate? How many files? They know all this, and that's why I was saying earlier that it seems to me like the managers are working on off-book. They've got their own details, and they're reporting those details to Alden, but it's not connected to the master plan, which means that all of a sudden I can't see the forest for the trees. So that's my last point there. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what the team says. So if you go to the next page, thank you. As you know, every month I present to you what the team is saying. This is their method of tracking their progress, and you can see how it's gone since January to the most current one, which is this week's report. Okay, I think there's some good news there. Is that by the way, all work on interfaces actually finally achieved green status. That's good news. That's good news. But data migration, and we've talked about this, okay? This push to try to be perfect with making sure the data is correct in every way, all of a sudden we've gone from green to yellow and now to red. And that's all of the data activities, which is Mach 3, Mach 4 is coming. Data continues to be the issue. We're trying to be too perfect. Okay? So here's some comments that they basically provide. Why is testing yellow? Defect discovery pace is worrisome versus closure. That's their statement. Data migration is red, about 1 week behind schedule, continuation of Mach 3, which was supposed to finish 2 months ago, or a month ago, excuse me. Currently 1.5 week delay from the planned finish of 7/21. That's last Friday. Pushing to have remaining Mach 3 activities by 7/28. So, and that's, everybody's going to really work pretty hard, I think, in making sure that that's exactly what happens. Now, that means more than likely there'll be some people working in the weekend on that. Okay? I had said earlier we need to pay attention to 2 areas: paying people and acquiring goods and services. And that's where everybody needs to be focused no matter what. Well, what I wanted to show you is the testing with regard to paying people. I think there's some, generally speaking, there's some good news here, is that the whole issue of paying people was addressed in SIT 1 and was addressed in SIT 2 and is now being addressed in SIT 3. What I asked the team for is I said, okay, I want to see and understand the scripts that you are running to do exactly that, to test payroll. So I'm trying to put a little pressure on them regarding that. Now, interestingly enough, these 3, teledriver, telestaff for police, and telestaff for fire, haven't been processed yet in SIT 3. They have been processed in SIT 1 and 2. That doesn't mean that this is an issue. It just means that they haven't gotten to it yet. And they've still got a couple of weeks to make sure they get to it and basically be able to tell Alden it's been run successfully. And successfully means that it's been validated, the results have been validated by people in the payroll department. Okay? So that's pretty good news, generally speaking, for the pay people aspect of it. And then we get to, I asked a similar question for SRM, which in essence is the order to cash or order to pay cycle, which is acquiring services, purchasing, right? I asked the same question and still waiting to get some information on that. Okay, so there are, I've counted them, there are 20 scenarios which address procure to pay. Each has multiple scripts or steps, okay, which is related to ordering material and supplies. However, because there were some shopping cart and SRM configuration issues over the last few months, none of these activities have been run in SIT 1 and SIT 2, so it's really a first time through on SIT 3. You need to understand that. We need to recognize that.
All the talk about shopping cart issues. There was some talk about requiring ordinances, and then it was we didn't need ordinance change. Are we still don't need ordinance change? Do we still have to do one?
From what I'm hearing, ER is managing this, that the administration and ER has determined that there's no assembly action required with regards to the shopping cart.
I just want to make absolute sure. Thank you.
That's what I've been hearing lately.
Mr. Harris' hand's going up. Mr. Harris, is there a change?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's a question that we're just running through the cycle again. All is exactly correct, but most of the references to PeopleSoft occur through policies and procedures. And of course, we would have to have the assembly make a change there. The bigger issue would be, what if after go live there's a hiccup, for example, on Friday or Thursday when we're trying to get things through PACE? We just want to make sure that if there's a hiccup in SAP on that day, that we're not holding up the business of the municipality, either to manage the acquisition process or to do payroll, for example. And right now, I think under current code, there's not really a lot of latitude for example, when I do a fund serve, I I've got to see the fund cert, I've got to make sure it's there in order for me to say, this is good to go. So if, for example, I was able to get a fund cert on a certain day, I'm just tracking down, I'm in the process right now of tracking down that won't be a problem. And if it is, we'll come back and talk to you.
Because I just want to make sure that there's nothing that somebody needs to do that could delay this process from going live. So I want to make sure if there's our code changes, we get them done ahead of time.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that would be our objective. Right now, I don't know of anything, but I'm thinking about the what-ifs, and one of the what-ifs would be, the system goes down on a Thursday when I'm trying to get PACE deadlines done. Are there ways for me to keep moving the business and municipality forward while we go back and bring the system back up?
Questions for some assembly members? Okay, Zed, go ahead, sir.
I'll try to pick up the pace here a little bit. Hopefully you'll bear with me.
We have about 15 minutes.
Okay. I can do a lot in 15 minutes, right?
You've already been doing a lot. We appreciate your service.
I have made a direct request to the team. This is to try to put a little pressure on them. Really, I would like to see that they have a test from beginning to end on procure to pay, and I'm suggesting have 2 departments order 10 laptops each. Okay, and then literally, here is a list of all the things that I think need to occur in that particular scenario. All right. And the purpose here is to take it all the way through from beginning to end. And when I say beginning to end, that means you make a request for something, you issue a purchase order for it, you receive an invoice for it, you receive the item itself, and then you pay it. Okay? Right now, to the best of my knowledge, I can't find a scenario that does that in the list of scenarios that they presented to me. So, and I think the Assembly should ask Alden to keep you up to date with whether or not, because this is your proof, from a testing perspective, your proof that you can order and acquire supplies and goods, which is all about go, no go on August the 11th. Okay? So project costs, we'll kind of roll through it. There's a lot of similarities here. I'm just updating these numbers for you. Bottom line is we're still running an average of about 2,600 consultant hours on the project. It is starting to tail off a little, okay? So we hit 2,150 last 2 weeks ago, okay? If you go to the next page, again, I'm just trying to keep a running total here from January. Where the green is where the fees that we're paying the consultants. The purple is travel, and the average you can see is running across there. So the weekly average is now up $5,000. It's sitting at $500,000 a week. Okay. So there is a slight understatement because the personnel overseas seem to be a little slow in reporting their time, and I don't have the last 3 weeks. So. Go on. Yeah, this is very, very little change here in terms of percent of who are we paying the money to. So about 75% is SAP, 21% is Peloton. Those are the 2 major contractors that we're paying the money to. And those were the contracts that you saw adjusted Tuesday night. Okay? I do think that you're going to start seeing the SAP portion drop down in terms of percent of total because the developers and the testers are going to basically start rolling off. And I think the HCM consultants, a good portion of them are going to leave in about a week or 2. Is that right?
Well, we only have 5 HCM people working, so they're actually staying. The testers, we have 13. Those would be a roll off. We're only down to 6 developers now. They've already rolled off from your numbers.
Yeah, I don't have the last 3 weeks.
I got it. We're moving and doing a variety of things.
So let's move on. This you've seen before. This is what I presented to you last month, and those were the estimates and that I had projected out. And then if you go to the next page, this is what Alden presented to you last week. Okay. All I did here is okay. Here's the Peloton contract change. Here's the SAP contract change. The estimate for MOA resources. For the 5.8 million. So there's your 81.5, which we're now at. Okay. If you talk about contracting, excuse me, this is one I would like to talk about. So I think the Assembly we only have 12 weeks to go live. We only have 10 weeks until people start reporting time, we only have 2 weeks until we get to August 11. I mean, so getting an update on a monthly basis from Alden is you're not going to get much. I mean, all of a sudden things are going to happen and you're not going to know. So it seems to me like either weekly or bi-weekly, you should be asking Alden for an update, and I would focus entirely on not entirely, but mainly on, is payroll going to work? Can we acquire goods and services? Okay? And then there's also this whole issue, I got to pass benefit information off to Blue Cross Blue Shield. All right? So if we talk about contracting, I think you're all aware, we just mentioned what those amounts were. But I think the important thing here is it does look like you're pretty well funded to get you through to 10/30. And, basically the Alaska IT people who have been on the project for a while now are not involved with the project team. The few that are still here are actually being funded by IT. Training, I think we've already said it's starting Friday. We've already talked about the 40 trainers. The target, of course, is, and that's where the priority is on how do I make sure that all 2,900 people know how to get their time in. So the entire focus is going to be on that in the first couple of weeks. Okay? And you should probably, I think you ought to drop in on one of the training classes. I really do. The policy changes, it's just no change. So this still stands, Dick. I mean, there's to the best of my knowledge, based on the information I'm receiving, there's no impact on the assembly and the need for code changes.
Well, we'll find out as we get closer to go live.
I keep asking for updates to that because I want to keep reminding people we can't let that kind of stuff sit. We don't want to be surprised.
No.
Okay, so in terms of commentary on the outlook, the project management team needs to understand that we continue to have some concerns with regard to morale and confidence on the team itself. Okay, so you can't just ignore that just because we're seeing the end. As I mentioned to you, yes, the team sees the end. Yes, they're a little bit better. That doesn't mean we should assume that everything is wonderful. This is a time when the team should be over-communicating to the municipality. There should be announcements probably every day. And they're not. In fact, from a training perspective, I have been told by several people that they're wondering, when am I supposed to sign up? When is it going to happen? And that should not be right now. They should be told, they should be getting emails, they should be getting, go to the website and see the schedule. I mean, it's something. It's not happening. Should over-communicate. We need to manage expectations. As part of that communication, I think it's important to let people know what they will not get day one. Need to know what they won't get, so there's no surprises. Manage expectations. Yes.
Dick, I'm going to just jump in.
Go ahead, Barbara.
The Assembly Department is planning training. We are in that loop. I want to say this before Mr. Croft leaves. All of the Assembly members are going to need to get trained because you're not going to be able to know what's on your payroll advice or get your employee self-service information. So you will be hearing from the department about that before September 11th. You will have to do training.
An example of over-communicating. Excellent.
Thank you for reminding me, Zig.
Barbara, do we have any work sessions planned for after the drop dead date in August? Do we have anything planned? Because I want to talk to Alden. I want to know what's happening when we hit that drop dead, go live or not go live date in August. Do we know?
We can follow up on that, and I can set up a training.
I would
for the
appreciate it.
assembly
Thank you.
training plan.
Thank you. Go ahead, Zig.
Let's move on. Yeah, these are all items we've talked about before. Okay. Looking beyond go live, again, these are items that we had last month. It hasn't really changed. I mean, it's important for everybody to realize what's going to happen afterwards. And it's not inconsequential. Okay? So I do have...
Welcome,
some
Mr. Constant.
I spoke to you last month about some recommendations, spent some time on those. I'm just giving you the summary bottom line here. You know, I still think that, you know, the community needs to establish a solution stabilization period. Okay, and that's support, hold your hand, you know, those kinds of things. Without a doubt, you need to establish that and need to literally staff it and pay attention to it. I think you need to establish another project, another capital project. I would suggest you call it Synergy 2 rather than calling it an SAP project. It's time to move beyond the concept of SAP as everything. Okay, it's your system. Right? And you know, all those items I had earlier get included. And you treat it as a project so you can address it as a whole rather than nickel-diming. Okay? I still think you need to initiate a cost audit. So you have an external auditor, probably ought to talk to them and say, hey, what would it take to actually audit the cost of this project? Find out where the money went. Okay? And then I also think you need to have a performance audit. And what I have done is the explanations and the detail that I talked to you about last month, they are after my questions slide. So they're still in here. So you can certainly refer to those. And it does describe what is a performance audit. Now, you don't have, your external auditor probably doesn't have the resources here in town to do it. Okay, you certainly don't have the resources internally to do it. You need people who know and understand big IT projects. Okay, because you're talking about the performance of the project, not the performance of the system, the performance of the project. Ability to stay on time, on schedule, on budget. Okay, any questions?
Question from assembly members. Suzanne.
Could you summarize what scenarios we can expect given this current trajectory when we go live? I mean, a best case scenario, things work well, there might be a few bugs, they're resolved within that 20-day SAP support period, transition continues to internal IT folks with maybe a little bit of consulting work. I mean, what would a worst case scenario look like?
Well, the worst case scenario, of course, is that on August 11 you say no go.
Okay.
Okay, that's your. There's no question that's your worst case scenario. Because if the team says no go on August the 11th, you have no chance, even remotely, to try to turn the system on and collect time on 9/11. Nor do you have a chance to start collecting transactions on 10/2. Most likely, if you say no go on August 11, then you are faced with coming up with a different way of finishing the implementation. Okay, because your contract with SAP will probably run down, or you'll end it early. There's a variety of pieces there, but. That's your worst case scenario.
Okay.
Okay. Your best case scenario is you say go on August 11th. All right. I think your odds are pretty decent right now. All right. And that means that you end up turning the system on and you end up collecting time on 9/11. And it means you end up collecting transactions on 10/2. And you move all the PeopleSoft data over, what is it, about the third week of October? Is that about right? Third week of October. So that means that by middle of November, you actually are doing your first close. So those are all positive things. And by then, you will have issued 3 or 4 payroll cycles. Okay. You will have people actually accessing and using the system on a weekly basis to get operations reports of actual activity. You won't have comparisons to prior months because you got to wait for all that software, the PeopleSoft closed data. So now, several things are not going to be there, okay? I mean, there's going to be a kludgy way of tracking all of the procurement card data. Now, you've got a lot of purchases by a procurement card. Now, the system recognizes and will accept procurement card data, it's just that it only tracks 3 data fields. So the rest of the information with regard to procurement data is going to be at the bank. Now, you'll have access to it, you'll still be able to do it, but you probably won't actually have all of that in some automated solution until January, February, March, somewhere in there. Okay, but so there's going to be some grumbling about procurement cards, without a doubt. There's also going to be grumbling with regard to I can't go to Muniverse and get that exact same query that I got with PeopleSoft. There's going to be grumbling about that, which is why I keep saying you need to manage that expectation.
But there always is, Zig. Anytime you change computer systems, people are used to doing it one way, now they can't do it that way.
Yeah. And then the last item, if I may, in terms of grumbling, is that you have changed your account code structure. No matter how well you train, and I know that that's included in the training, there's going to be grumbling about that's not the way the accounting was done before.
I know, Barbara, we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Felix, go
I'll
ahead.
be quick because I know we're
Quick, we're
schedule.
out of time. EMAT's the starting.
Yep. So thank you, Mr. Chair. So page 28, I want to thank you, Zig, for all of these recommendations. Page 28, I think, is extremely critical for us to pay attention to as a body, and I don't think it's good enough for us to wait until after August 11th for us to look back at this. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like us to see if we can implement these recommendations, because on Tuesday, I think we all took responsibility for making sure that this got done. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
I agree, but we took responsibility a long time ago, sir.
That's true.
This work session's over with. Thanks for being here.